Cool mask, kid. Where you get it from? Your little mommy gave it to you? I'm gonna hold on to this for you.
Mask is just too cheap, eh? That will now do. And this one, too flimsy. It's like a frisbee. None of these masks are gonna work. Need to find my old one again, eh? This bag gets itchy. What is this, eh? Guess I'll open it.
Dear Canadian Jason, how's Texarkana? I enjoyed my time there. I just want to tell you where your mask is.
Who the fuck are you?
I'm back, bitches.
Hey, I'm Gore Movie.
I'm Danny Nightmare.
And we're Horror Addicts. And today we are celebrating Friday the 13th with our review of Friday the 13th Part 3.
Steve Miner directed this film in 1982.
Steve Miner was also an associate producer on Friday the 13th Part 1, and he directed Lake Placid, House, Halloween H2O, Warlock, and Friday the 13th Part 2. It was written by Mark Kitrosser, who also wrote Part 5, and Carol Watson, who also wrote Part 4. And of course, Harry Manfredini is back with the music, but this time it's like a jazzier one.
Very funky.
Funky time. Now, at this point in the franchise, they were just like popping these puppies out like crazy, but originally Friday the 13th Part 3 was set in a mental asylum, and it was going to follow Ginny, and then I guess Jason was going to track her down for revenge and start killing everybody in the hospital. But the actress who plays Ginny, Amy Steele, was busy at the time, so she couldn't do it, but she since said that she regrets that.
Instead, this movie starts out on Saturday the 14th, and the majority of it takes place on a Sunday the 15th.
Sad, Jason. So does this 3D slasher still hold up? Well, we're going to give you guys a rundown of the plot, and then we're going to talk about the good, the bad, and the gory.
As we mentioned, this movie takes place right after the last one ended. This is a Saturday, and he's going to break into a grocery store and kill some people. But then on Sunday, he's going after Chris and her helpless teenage friends and a couple random hippies who are just visiting the cabin. She hasn't been there for a while.
Yeah, Chris is returning back to this cabin that she grew up in. It's been a while for her because the last time she was there, she was hiding out in the woods when Jason came upon her. She blacked out and then she ended up at home, but she's still traumatized by the events of that night and coming face to face with Jason Voorhees. So now she's returned with her friends to confront her fear and hopefully move on with their life. Of course, that's not gonna happen.
No. How the hell did you get away from him anyways?
See, that's interesting that you mentioned that because there is a fan theory that she didn't get away from him. She blacked out when he's dragging her away, and a lot of people believe that Jason raped her.
That's my only actual kind of bad portrayal, I think, of Jason in this movie. He came out very rapey in that flashback.
Well, it would explain why when she's with Rick, she's very, don't touch me, back off, There could be a good reason behind that.
Maybe.
At some point, Jason's got to figure out how the birds and the bees work,
Maybe she was his test dummy on that.
Or maybe her dad found her and fought Jason off, or maybe more happened and she blacked out.
Or maybe being aroused scares Jason and he ran away, not knowing what was happening to him.
Yeah, maybe. Maybe he had a giant boner and he just freaked out and ran off into the woods.
You think that head's deformed too?
Yeah, dude. And of course, this movie was in 3D, which kind of paved the way for a lot of 3D movies like Amityville 3D, Jaws 3D. At the time this came out, 3D was kind of a big deal.
Even though I wasn't a big fan of that little flashback they had of Jason, I love the rest of what Richard Brooker has done with the character. He's definitely one of the scarier Jasons of the franchise.
He was cast because he's ridiculously tall, and he's also very limber. Before this, he was a trapeze artist, and they actually had to pad him up to make him look a little bit bigger in the suit. And overall, I think all the performances in this movie are very good and very believable. I liked Chris, I liked Shelley. I think the kids for the most part are pretty likable, except for Rick. Rick sucks.
My imagination, or did it just get cold in here?
I even like Andy. There's not much to him, but he walks upside down, and he's got a pregnant girlfriend named Debbie.
Yeah, they got a baby on the way.
The hippies are, stoned all the time, but no complaints.
And Shelley gives us the mask, the iconic mask that Jason is best known for. He doesn't get until this movie when Shelley is putting it on as a prank, and then Jason goes in, kills him, and is like, hey, free mask.
Yeah, Shelley's one of the most important characters in the whole movie. He might not be the final girl or anything, but actually he kind of saves the day inadvertently. Those bikers wouldn't show up if it wasn't for him.
I did it! I did it! I did it! Did I do it?
Yes, you did it. You were great.
That was great!
And Jason having the mask was kind of an accident. One of their set guys is a big Red Wings fan, and he needs to always carry a giant bag of hockey equipment with him to set every day. Well, they were trying on different things from that to have Shelley play around with him for Jason to wear, and they loved the Red Wings goalie mask, and it's stuck to this day.
Yep. Thank God for happy accidents. Shelley himself is pretty funny, constantly pulling gags, but a lot of the other characters have good humor in this. Chris holding onto the barn rope as she's raised up. The grocers in the beginning, they're pretty funny.
As a kid, I always felt bad for the grocer. He was nice to his bunny, he fed his fish. But now that I'm older and I'm like, oh, really? He's gonna take a swig out of the orange juice and then try and sell it? I mean, that lettuce has rabbit fur all over it and probably shit. It's gross, man. He totally had it coming.
Yeah, there's a lot of funny moments in this movie, and I also just like Chris as a final girl. She's athletic, she's brave. I think it's so cool when she's hanging from the rafters and then she drops on Jason. She's quite the badass, and I think it's really cool that she's returning to this cabin to face her fears, to not let that fear own her. It goes wrong, horribly, but hey, it was a good idea.
Yeah, she really brings the fight to him. I'm not saying he didn't deserve it, but that's a little dark for a protagonist.
Yeah, because Jason's so light, what with shoving burning pokers through people's chests.
Hey, the guy has a sense of humor himself. Alright, even though I liked the practical effects in this movie, there's the 3D effect.
The 3D effects are awful, and they're very distracting, and they take up a lot of time that could be better used for the story. And they've interviewed the actors since this movie's come out, and 3D alone takes a little bit longer to set up, so there was a lot of sitting around and waiting. But instead of being asked to develop their characters, they were asked to come up with more 3D gags. The actors say that majority of their focus on this film was spent trying to come up with more goofy things to do in 3D.
Yeah, you're gonna get a lot of scenes that are like...
I mean, I guess, yeah, in 1982 was probably impressive, but overall it's very kitschy and gimmicky.
Most of the characters were great, but there is one I do kind of have a problem with, and that's the Doom Prophet. I felt like he was a real step down from the Doom Prophet we had in the first two movies, and the whole eyeball gag once again with the 3D effects, it wasn't doing it for me.
What he needed was a bicycle.
Yeah.
Bicycles are scary. True story.
I have no penis. It was torn off in a bicycle accident.
One thing I didn't really like, and I do like Shelley. Shelley's a pretty fun character for the most part, but I think it's bullshit when he calls Vera a bitch for not being into him. She's perfectly nice to him. What's his problem?
Plus, he introduces himself by saying sorry, and he's just very self-loathing, and then he expects her to be into him?
Yeah, his feeling sorry for himself is about the only thing I really don't care for with Shelley.
I think when I was younger I really did sympathize for all that, but now it just kind of annoys me.
One thing that is interesting to note about Shelley, though, is he was not an actor before this movie. He was found on a street corner handing out flyers for a horror movie, and they approached him and said, hey, you want to be in a horror movie? So that's pretty impressive.
He's played by Larry Zerner, who really hasn't done much, except for the fact that he played Shelley on The Knights of Badassdom. Knowing Joe Lynch, that's not a coincidence.
Now, one character I didn't like was Rick.
Did I do something wrong?
Oh yeah.
Wham! My girlfriend is traumatized, won't put out. Wham! She doesn't want hugs. Oh, dude, get over it. It's called masturbation. Give it a shot. Also, what's his deal? He's like walking around wearing Jason's mom's sweater and he doesn't expect to get his ass kicked? They also repeated a lot of things from Friday the 13th Part 1 in this film. Like, they just didn't have the time to be as creative. There's the kill, the Kevin Bacon kill is repeated in this on Debbie. We have another Voorhees leaping out and jumping at the canoe scene.
Why do those final girls always go to the canoe afterwards anyways?
Because it's cozy. I also think they could have worked a little bit more on the sound design in this picture. A lot of times we either don't hear anything, like when Chris drops down onto Jason, or we get a little like quick musical beat. But I think some cool like, you know, thwacking and whoosh, whoosh, whoosh.
Surrender that gigantic pie.
Those things, those are good. More of that would have been good. So in Friday the 13th Part 3, we have 13 kills total. That's including the unborn baby and 3 off-screen kills. And this is a Friday the 13th film, so of course there's sex and nudity, though not as much in this film as there are in some of the other Friday the 13th films.
Yeah, we get one pair of lovely boobs from Tracy Savage, who plays Debbie.
And my favorite kill in this movie is twofold. One, because I really hate Rick, and two, because when Rick gets killed, his eyes burst out of his head in 3D.
My favorite kill would be Andy. I liked the guy, but just seeing someone sliced down the middle from upside down was pretty brutal.
I do wish we would have seen a little bit more on that kill and that the blood didn't hit the camera. For the most part, the kills are pretty good in this movie, but there are, like I said, a few off-screen kills and a lot of cutaways. I know originally they got a rated X for this and they had to do a lot of editing down in order to get that R rating.
Yeah, I felt it was kind of a shame that we didn't get to see Shelley mortally wounded. He does show up just in time to see him die and get that cool, like, boy who cried wolf effect, but,
Well, they can't show Shelley dying because you're supposed to think when Jason comes out wearing the mask that it's Shelley.
Yeah. But he was pulling pranks the whole time. I just kind of wanted to see that look on his face when something happened to him, you know?
Richard Brooker as Jason just enjoys scaring people. He like lifts up his mask and taunts Chris. He's so freaking creepy, and that smile, and when we see it again when he's in the window, dude.
Like a big sadistic kid.
I also love the ending where Chris is finally rescued, but we see that she's never really going to be rescued because she's balls crazy at this point.
Yeah, she kind of ended up like Sally did in the end of Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
Even Mrs. Voorhees looks scarier in this movie. She's all decaying and covered in bugs and such.
Yeah, that lake water's doing nothing for her complexion.
So, should you see it? Own it, duh. And if you seriously haven't seen this movie yet, then today's the best day to get off your ass and go do so right now.
Cut! So let us know down in the comments what you thought of Jason in 3D.
Thanks for watching!
Yeah.